Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art of Safe Scumming. It's great to be here as always. Thank you for tuning in. And today we're continuing our analysis of the cult rework. This time we're talking about Nurgle. Thus far we've done Khorne and Tzeentch, and now we're doing Nurgle. I have not touched Slaanesh yet, even though that's kind of like my favorite of the Chaos factions. I'm saving it for last. But right now I'll front load you with how I feel about the cult rework as it applies to Nurgle. I'll say that Khorne, I feel, was impacted the least. Tzeentch is probably going to be impacted the most, unless I uncover something in my Slaanesh playthrough that just absolutely blows my socks off. I can't, that's a Slaanesh joke, cannot believe that it would be more impactful than Tzeentch. And then Nurgle, I'm going to put kind of like right in the middle. So, and I will say that it plays substantially different than what you're doing with Tzeentch. So, first off, let's just look at the individual buildings that are available for Nurgle. Let me find a cult here that has an open build slot. So first off, the main line here, this building gives you infections per turn and then 20 infections if there's an enemy lord present. This one, 50 income, and then if there's a plague going on, then you get an additional 300. This one is about keeping those plagues going, so you can get up to 100% extra plague duration by having the Nurgle corruption high. This one is all about corruption, but if you have your hero present, it triples the rate by going from 5 to 15. And then this one basically has to do with corruption, but it also gives you a little bit of experience, which is, I think, is very thematic when it comes to like slowly building how Nurgle does. And then, of course, research rate, which is very much impactful after 5.3 when we've got the calculation for research rate overflow. Very impactful now. So I think that that's pretty important. You no longer need to get 10 of these for it to be impactful. Building one of these buildings will downstream impact you throughout your entire campaign. So definitely an important thing. Next chain is the random plague. So doing this will destroy the cult, but it'll give you a random plague in this settlement. This one is your transfer faction leader. So this one takes 1, and it costs 100 infections. This one costs 300 infections, also takes 1 turn, transferred to your faction leader. And then, of course, your Cult Magnus building. This one is corruption, costs you extra, and it's very easily to be discovered with a 90 on the discoverability, and then it has to last for 10 turns to give you a Cult Magnus. This also destroys the building chain, not the actual cult. So there's the lay of the land of the buildings. Now, in my opinion, there are 3 different ways that you're going to use these cults when it comes to Nurgle. The first is going to be what I'm calling an allied build chain. So if we look over here, we've got Zatan the Black. His region borders mine. We have good relations with him, right? Good relations with him. He's not going to declare war on us anytime soon. He isn't a defensive ally or anything like that, but he's in good terms with us. What I've done here is I've come in with just a random cultist, spawned it from over here somewhere, came in, started a cult at the Granite Spikes, immediately built the Cult Magnus chain so that I can get up there, get that rolling so that we, in 11 turns after we start that, we've got a Cult Magnus. I then took another cultist, or I disbanded that cultist, recruited another one, walked him over here, started another cult over here. So now we've got Granite Spikes and Fortress of Eyes. It's working with corruption. Getting that corruption up, I stationed a hero here to get that corruption to go all the way to 100. So we got all the benefits of that, not only in plagues and all that sort of stuff, but we've also got it so that all of our buildings that are impacted by corruption are impacted by corruption to the maximum degree. I've now built the income generated for plagues and the research rate. So the research rate, we want that basically everywhere, and the income building, wherever it is applicable, build that. Once we get the corruption up to 100%, We're then going to delete this. We no longer need this, and we're going to build this chain or this building in that location. And then we have enough base corruption going on from all of these other buildings to keep the corruption all the way up. So we don't really have to worry about that. Also, because they're spreading corruption of their own, while that negatively impacts us, it is not as impactful as Untainted. So the Chaos Dwarves are just going to maintain the corruption. As long as you have more corruption producing capability than they do, you're not going to lose the Nurgle corruption with a little bit of extra help from your buildings in the region. So to recap, we're producing income. We're producing income. We're producing corruption. We've got our extra Lord Recruit rank. We've got our extra cultists. This is harder to discover. We've got all kinds of corruption in the area. We've got research rate 30% from the province. And then when it's all said and done, we're going to have an additional 150 per turn. But then an additional on top of that, if we can generate a plague here in each of the locations in the province, 900 plus the 3% modifier that you can see there from something else. So the strategy goes like this. We get all those buildings built, and then we pop a plague here. Does not matter what plague it is. You just pick 3 symptoms. Pick the symptoms. Doesn't matter. And then you get spread all the way as far as you can. If you got extra, then you do your duration for a chance to spread and a chance that is on there. If you've got a heck of a lot of extra infections, then you can drop the immunity and you can have an opportunity for it to recycle on you in the same province. The idea is we pop it here and we want it to spread into this region, generating us the extra income. So that is cult type 1 that you're going to do, and that's an allied chain. You can see that I've done one of those there. I've got one of those that's in the process of being built in Archaon's area. I'm going to do the same thing over here with these Chaos Dwarves, and then this region over here doing the exact same thing with these Chaos Dwarves. So that is how you set up the allied chain. The next is going to be an enemy chain. The enemy chain is an area that is far away from you, or I suppose on your border, sort of, but you don't intend to actually invade there anytime soon. You're at war with this faction, but you're not going to get to them for like 30 or 40 turns or even longer. You may have no intentions of going there whatsoever. In this instance, we've got Kislev. We built this building here, and this is 5 per turn. And then in the Hell Pit location, they almost always keep some kind of army here, whether it's Katerin herself or whatever. You can see that what I've done here is I've built the Cult Magnus. They ended up discovering this, so you got to be careful with this. You build this building here, and this is just to produce 25 infections per turn. We go over, I've done the same thing in Kislev, and what I'm doing here ultimately is getting this up. And then once I've got that set, I need to evaluate whether or not the corruption is going to be enough to keep that going after I get this cultist over here will be in there to help build that corruption in the region. And again, Cult Magnus, we want that discoverability down. We want all the additional benefits of that. But we're prioritizing the fact that they keep armies in the area, and that is to generate infections. So this is the primary. This is really sort of a secondary, but because we've got a Cult Magnus in the area, we might as well do it. You should always be looking to do that in one of the regions so that you continue to have influence. Now, the way that this would work, kind of, if we look over here in Nagaron, for instance, I've got one here in Hagreef. I'm starting to build the Magnus Cult. I'm then going to pop that Magnus Cult. Is going to go up to Nagaron. They almost always have an army in Nagaron, not necessarily in Hagreef, but Hagreef is good because they may not discover this cult. They're less likely to discover that cult without a bunch of heroes moving through here like they do over here usually. So Cult Magnus here. Cult Magnus is going to come over here, put that in there, and then we're going to do the exact same thing, and then ultimately, because they are across the map and there's no way they're going to ever come for us, we're actually going to declare war on them. The third type of Nurgle Cult that you're going to use is basically fuck that guy over there. We're going to take my strongest army and drop it in his backyard. So what I've done here basically is I've disbanded some cultists somewhere that I wasn't using, popped one here at the Dread Rock, sailed him 2 turns over here, started the cult at the Bitter Bay, and used the single turn, transfer my faction leader. Tamarkan comes here, sacks this position, then can capture this, and then all of a sudden I have the ability to recruit another full stack army if I wanted to. Could have easily paid for it. Got all the units that I need. Could have completely filled out this army if I thought I needed it. And now Tamarkan can literally march right on the capital, even take it with a Pyrrhic victory against Imric, unsupported in auto-resolve. The only thing that I think is missing, in my opinion, if we were to look at this this right here, random plague will be given to this settlement. Not really that impactful. I'm sorry. I don't think that is all that necessary. I think that should still be in there. Like, if I wanted to use that would be great. I don't like that the cult is destroyed upon building completion. Okay? I would like to see this change from, instead of the cult destroyed, the building is destroyed. So make this 100 infections, and then there's a random cult that's built in a place clear across the map, right? So I could sit there and continuously spawn plagues if I wanted to spawn plagues on somebody. Don't destroy the entire cult. A random plague will be given to this settlement. A random plague will be given to all adjacent settlements. So if you wargame this right, and then the cult is destroyed upon building, again, I don't think that is a really good expenditure for 500 infections. Like, if they made this so it didn't destroy the entire cult, but just the building, then I would find this to be impactful. I think that there should still be a third building in here, which is something like what Tzeentch has. And that would actually be a good balance, because you're like, oh, well, we don't want everybody to be able to spread their cults. But it makes sense, given that Nurgle is about infection. Infections spread. The idea that Tzeentch has the ability to randomly spread their cults, but the Nurgle faction does not, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I think that if they both had it, then that would be a good balance for them to. And then not having the ability to spread cults and the other factions would just be the fact that they are not in a war against each other. Because remember that Tzeentch and Nurgle are kind of counter forces. So having them having mirror sides to what they can do, in my opinion, makes a lot of sense. Now, the ability to just randomly spread the cults clear around the map, I don't think makes a lot of sense for Nurgle. But for instance, if we had the ability to say, build this building, and it has kind of like the Skaven have, where it builds, well, I guess that's the way Tzeentch does too. The ability to say, okay, well, any adjacent settlements have an increased chance of spreading the plague, right? Or you could make it so, hey, once we've spread the corruption in this region, we have a higher chance of the cult automatically spawning in an adjacent region. Kind of like what we had before this rework, where cults would just randomly spawn in areas of high corruption for that type. Something like that to make it a little bit more infection-y than it currently is. Because I think that Nurgle, being the disease cult, it should be able to spread without having to take a cultist and walk it over there and spread it actively. That's my take on the Nurgle cults. And then, of course, we will have the Slaanesh one coming when I have an opportunity to do a Slaanesh campaign. Thanks for tuning into the Art of Scumming, and hopefully we'll see you on another one here pretty soon.